When the Conservative Party are trying to make immigration very much one of the dividing lines of the forthcoming general election, to be able to say that actually we have a former Conservative MP now on our benches who actually thinks that Keir Starmer's plan on tackling immigration is better than Rishi Sunak's plan, that's quite a big political win for them. And I think they were very well aware that this was going to cause a storm, but they actually thought that that was a significant enough sort of win from the change for them to be able to weather this storm.
Now, some up-to-the-minute analysis from the Sunday Times' political editor, Caroline Wheeler. Hello, Caroline.
Good morning.
Good morning. We should start with what's been the story of the week. Natalie Elphicke's surprise, nay, shock transformation from the Conservative MP for Dover to the Labour MP for Dover and the sort of continued fallout from it. Is there a story behind the story here?
What, in terms of how she was actually recruited? Yeah. Or well, kind of. I mean, I've been trying to get to the bottom of it because actually, if you think about it, the question that I want the answer to is what the gain was here for the Labour Party. Because,
for anyone.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, for anyone, actually. And, you know, I mean, I've been genuinely surprised by how many Labour MPs have come to me and expressed their kind of consternation about what's happened. One Labour MP telling me that they were a little bit heartbroken by the decision. Wow. I think partly because the party has done so much to try and sort of bring back integrity to the party and to deal with some of its rougher sides, including sort of tackling anti-Semitism and trying to promote itself as a sort of changed party. And then to accept somebody like Natalie Elphicke, who obviously holds views which are, you know, very far removed from those of many of her new party colleagues. And I think I was speaking to a senior Labour source even a few moments ago about why that might have happened. And they genuinely believe that whilst they understand some of the concerns that Labour MPs have about her and her previous behaviour, and what we're talking about here is that she defended her ex-husband, who was convicted of sexual assaults in a Crown Court.
Although that seems to be, I mean, that's a clear personal failing, but that's not the... That's almost like not the meat of it, because that's not the politics, if you see what I mean.
It's not the politics, but I think some of that has sort of bled into people's thinking about it, particularly given that she was also suspended for the Commons from trying to intervene in that case. I mean, what you're talking about is the politics of it, and that she's very right-wing on immigration. Yeah. They actually see that as the win. Right. I mean, the person that I've just spoken to about it was saying, well, if you think about it, but when the Conservative Party are trying to make immigration very much one of the dividing lines of the forthcoming general election, to be able to say that actually we have a former Conservative MP now on our benches who actually thinks that Keir Starmer's plan on tackling immigration is better than Rishi Sunak's plan, that's quite a big political win for them. And I think they were very well aware that this was going to cause a storm, but they actually thought that that was a significant enough sort of win from the change for them to be able to weather this storm.
Do you think Keir Starmer has perhaps been slightly blindsided by the extent of the storm, didn't expect it, and there's almost a way you can couple that with a lot of his stance on Israel and Gaza, whereby whether or not he believes he's doing the right thing, and he obviously clearly does, he seems to have slightly underestimated what the pushback would be from people who certainly believe that, well, they may believe that they have the same politics as him, even if he doesn't believe he has the same politics as them, if you see what I mean.
I think definitely in the case of the Gaza sort of intervention, which obviously blew up in his face when he did that LBC interview, I think that did blindside him. As to the Natalie Elphicke thing, no, I'm told that they really wargamed this, that they were really very, very clear that they knew this was going to be something that was likely to cause a backlash, particularly within the party, but also potentially within the wider public. And it was very finely balanced, I think, for them, whether or not they thought that this was a win. And, you know, what I'm told is that it would have been a very different prospect had it have been that this particular MP was going to stand as a Labour candidate at the general election. And the fact that she has decided not to actually was a significant factor in them deciding that it was worth doing. So I don't think that they are necessarily surprised by the response that they have had. But I mean, I'm slightly worried about it because actually, you know, it suggests that they don't think that this cuts through with the public and that actually they think that very little of this will actually make any difference when people are thinking about politics. I'm just not sure that that's true. I think that the public are looking at Westminster now and thinking it's a bit of a sewer.
Yeah.
And, and I think that, it doesn't help when these kind of things blow up. It just kind of reconfirms that position to people, that, Parliament is kind of full of wrong-uns and people that are, very divisive and not doing the very good things that, does actually happen in politics all the time.
And also the sense that if you're in power, if you're leading a party like Keir Starmer, the game is the game, and the game is always going to be more important than any issues, any outcomes. Which is,
and that turns people off politics. I genuinely worry that actually turns people off politics. And actually, I think the danger with all of that is that the polls that I see and the talking to the electorate is that they think that both parties are as bad as each other. And I think that is damaging for democracy.
Given that she's not going to stand as an MP and be a Labour MP, what's in it for her?
Again, really good question, and one that I've been asking too. I mean, I'm told that she seems to be very happy with her decision. She thinks that she's made the right call, that she feels more comfortable politically now in the Labour Party, which is surprising. I mean, the people that I've spoken to categorically deny that she has been offered any kind of incentive to do this, that there is no peerage. They can't answer the question as to whether she's been offering any kind of sort of policy role, but I think Angela Rayner's been pretty punchy on the fact that she hasn't. And so I think, it's a really good question.
It's a mystery. Well, look, I mean, Keir Starmer this week has, linked to this, of course, he's been talking about small boats in Rwanda. He was speaking in Dover, indeed, alongside her. Very much parked his boat, if you park a boat, in Tory waters. He said that Labour will scrap the Rwanda plan, and he's laid out how his government would tackle the small boats problem instead. It's obvious why he's doing this. Do you think it's gonna work?
I mean, it's a really thorny issue to deal with. And, I know it's an unpopular view, but, pulling out of our arrangements with the European Union has made it all the more difficult to tackle this because, it's very difficult to return migrants that are crossing, which is hence why we've got this particular issue at the moment. I mean, I was actually more interested, other than the kind of headline-grabbing announcement that he made about how they were going to kind of tackle this at source and get the security services involved in helping them, in actually a piece that Matt Dathan did, where he talked about Britain entering into the fingerprinting regime that the European Union use.
Right.
And actually lots of sort of Labour politicians have said to me, whilst it's incredibly unpopular, that actually ID cards was the best way that you could have had to tackle this particular problem. And I wonder if this is kind of Labour thinking that this is a slightly softer approach to going down that route, which, as you and I will both remember, caused a kind of massive furore around the Tony Blair administration when it was suggested. So, I mean, look, it's a tricky issue. I think a lot of this, as we've just discussed, is playing politics around the issue. They know that it's one of the issues that the voters care about most. It comes up as one of the kind of top 3 issues when people are interviewed about it for focus groups and polling. Both parties have got to come up with a solution. At the moment, I think, both have bigger questions to answer about how effective they're going to be, particularly in the case of Rwanda at the moment. So, it's the jury's out, really.
I mean, the fact that Starmer says he basically said he will scrap Rwanda on day one, that presumably has implications for how the Rwandan government is engaging with the Rwanda policy right now, because they'll be looking at it and going, well, this has got months to run at best.
Yeah, we need to extract all the cash that they can out of it, right? They've got to do that before a Labour administration comes in. I mean, the question here is just how seriously this was ever a plan. And we've discussed this many times before. There are so many questions about how effective it's going to be, given the numbers of people that have come here already and are basically being detained because they have no legal status here. They are not being considered for asylum. They are simply in a queue to go to Rwanda. At the same time, many of those seem to have got lost because obviously if you think you're going to be deported to Rwanda, you might as well give Ireland a go or try and move on somewhere else, or you move into the black economy or whatever.
Or you might as well hide out for 6 months now until there's a Labour government.
Or exactly. And equally, the suggestion that there is even enough accommodation in Rwanda to deal with the numbers that we're talking about that have come even in the last sort of 18 months since, the law changed, is baffling. And it feels like, it's always been quite a totemic issue and something that they are desperately trying to get to the finishing line ahead of a general election.
Flip side from the other direction. Making his speech in Dover, Keir Starmer, he had the sort of Union Jack behind him. It was very red, white, and blue coloured. I noticed Natalie Elphicke was wearing her Union Jack scarf when she defected. Do Labour MPs have limitless patience for posing in front of the flag? I know they're trying to get away from the Emily Thornberry thing of how flags are shameful. But I mean, can Keir Starmer overplay that for his own side, do you think?
I think that they are actually doing it very overtly. I mean, I think that they want to be seen as a kind of patriotic party. And, that partly because there has been, previous sort of Labour administrations under Corbyn that sort of, apparently seem to be ashamed of the kind of British cultural values.
Yeah.
And I think he's very deliberately aligning himself with that. And I think that that's something that we'll probably see more of. And I don't think it raises too many questions for him within the party. I think most people are pretty comfortable with that. But I think it's probably, very deliberately being done as something that plays well with the electorate. Because as you know, at the moment, I mean, we could be, 6 months away from an election? We could be closer than that.
Yeah.
Everything that's being done now has to be seen through the prism of that general election that's looming.
Very briefly, before I let you go, the White House has been sort of toughening up the last couple of days in their language, and indeed it looks like they're going to be their policies as well towards Israel over the war in Gaza. Do you see the government here following suit?
Well, it's, again, really good question. I mean, I was looking at this sort of earlier on in the week and wondered where Cameron would go, particularly on the kind of weapons issue. And actually, he's been quite strident in saying, no, we're not going to follow Israel. So we're not going to follow the US on that particular policy at the moment. But yeah, look, I mean, we don't tend to do things without the support of the United States. We tend to be in lockstep with them. I suspect that at the moment, there's probably a little bit of an element of playing good cop, bad cop here with the Western allies. You want to have one diplomatic conversation with the Israelis, which is probably less fraught at the moment with the British than it is with the United States. And I suspect that that's a very deliberate tactic. But yeah, I'm sure they absolutely will be looking at what the US is doing and thinking about what comes next.
Thank you very much, indeed, Caroline Wheeler. And you can, of course, read Caroline in the Sunday Times tomorrow and all other Sundays.